Hi, welcome to Currents. I'm Mary Taylor. I'm a member of the steering committee for the first ever Cedar Falls Authors Festival. This collection of events will celebrate the works of 5 best-selling, nationally known authors that we have had here in Cedar Falls: Ruth Sukow, Beth Streeter Aldrich, Nancy Price, Robert Waller, and James Hurst. And I have some guests with me today who are going to add some information to those authors and tell you more about our festival. They are Rosemary Beach, Scott Coelty, and Sherry Dargan. And then Barbara Lonsberry, Mary Brammer, and Kim Manning are also members of our steering committee. Welcome. Thank you. Rosemary, can you tell us a little bit about how this festival happened to get started?
Well, I was having a group of women for lunch, and I asked Barbara if she would talk a little bit about Ruth Sukow, knowing that she was on a committee that had been happening for a number of years and meeting in Cedar Falls usually, and to explain to them the importance of Ruth Sukow as an author in her day, that she was nationally known, and plus the fact that she lived in Cedar Falls for some time. And so Barbara came, we talked, and we got in conversation said, well, you know, we got some really nice authors here. And as she began to look at it, we discovered the 5 that we are nationally known authors throughout the United States. So over a couple of cups of coffee and a couple of weeks, we had come up with this festival. And as I began to ask people if they'd be interested in it, there was nobody who told me no.
That's great, and that's just, you know, kind of a testament to the fact that everybody realized we had these resources here that not everybody knew about, and we just really wanted to share more about them. We do have a collection of almost 25 events that are part of the festival after just a few months of work of putting that together. And one of the great things about the festival is how many community organizations are part of that. Do you want to share a little bit about some of those other organizations?
I would love to. I'm going to have to read them off. I'll probably miss some. But of course, Cable 15, number 1, where we are today, Cedar Falls Community School System. And I'll just add there that we are doing Beth Streeter Aldrich later. And with the new school being named that makes it a double good thing. The Community Theater, Historic Preservation Commission, Historical Society, Municipal Band, Public Library, Tourism and Visitors Bureau, Community Main Street, Gallagher Blue Darn, Hartman Reserve, Hearst Center for the Arts, New All Day Lifescapes, the Ruth Sukow Memorial Association, and Western Home. Plus we have numerous people from the UNI campus, and we have the museum and the library also involved with that. So we're calling it really a collaboration of town and gown, because people who've not interchanged with each other before are getting an opportunity to.
Yep, and that's one of the great benefits, I think, of this whole project, is people are meeting each other and really having a chance to interact with counterparts on campus and in the community, and just getting an opportunity to network, and hopefully the other future endeavors are going to grow out of this project as well. I do want to be sure that we mention that we were very fortunate to receive a grant from the Cedar Falls Community Foundation and the Saul and Joan Diamond Community Enhancement Fund. We are really happy that they were willing to support our project, and that gives us a little funds to do some of the neat things that we're able to do with the festival. Sherry, we have a great website, and Sherry is our webmaster, cfauthorsfestival.org, and it's really just a font of information if you take a few minutes to look at that. Would you walk us through the website a little bit?
Sure. I just retired from Hawkeye Community College after about 25 years of teaching, and when Barb called and asked me to be on this committee, I had no idea how involved I was going to get. But I immediately saw that we had so much information, and we wanted to make things accessible to people. It didn't seem to be logical that we would have enough resources simply emailing things back and forth to each other. So the idea for the website was pretty pragmatic. I wanted it for committee users first, and then I wanted it for the public. And I am kind of proud of it. It's a free Google Sites, so the only cost to our committee has been $12 for the domain. And if you look at it on the home page, you've got pictures of the 5 authors, and underneath each one of the authors' pictures, it's actually a hyperlink that takes you to that author's page. And on that author's page, people can find out a little bit about their biography. They can find out a little bit about their list of works. They can also find out their Cedar Falls connection. And I thought that was really important to establish. It was amazing to me, the further we got into this, how many correlations there were, how many intersections there were. 3 of these people were students at UNI, 4 of them taught there. Just all kinds of fun things. But you'll also find the events page. And the events page has an embedded Google calendar on it. And then it has a narrative below that tells you for each month what's going to happen. You'll also see that each page now has a table of contents. So if you're just simply looking for May events, you can click on May events and go right there. So we've tried to make it as user-friendly as possible.
Very good. And one of the outcomes that we're hoping and is already working of the festival is really developing a more comprehensive list and awareness of other authors that are in our community.
Yes.
And that's a key feature of the website.
We, on the home page, I meant to say, please scroll down all the way and you'll say, there's a little header that says, are you a Cedar Falls author? And if so, would you please take this survey? And what the survey does is just gets you into our database. We're going to be generating a directory of Cedar Falls writers, and I think that's going to be a wonderful outcome. Thank you for reminding me.
You're welcome. Well, given that we are kind of recruiting new authors to our database, this festival might have legs into the future with those new folks.
I think so.
So the year-long series of events kicks off in May with a focus on Robert Waller, who passed away a couple of months ago. And most of us remember him mostly for the Bridges of Madison County, but he was very prolific in many other artistic pursuits as well. Scott Coelty is going to host a program on May 4th at 7 p.m. at the Hearst Center, and he's going to give us some insight into Waller's works. Why don't you give us a little preview of that?
On May 4th at 7 o'clock at the Hearst Center, I'm going to focus on Waller's songs. In 1984, we made a cassette, we meaning Winter Ridge Handy, a group at the time, and we made a cassette tape at Catamount Studios of 8 of his songs, and other songs too, but those 8 songs. I'm going to try to discuss all 8 and how they relate to Waller's works, as poetry and as music both.
Great. And I think that, the fact that he died has probably generated some renewed interest in his work, but so. Because we're going to be touching on some things that are not as obvious as the Bridges of Madison County on that first night, that will kind of prime people for then the second night, May 5th, and we will be focusing on the Bridges of Madison County on Friday evening with a showing of the movie and then some panel discussion about the movie.
Right. My colleagues in the English department, Grant Tracy and Barbara Lounsbury, and I are going to talk about the 2 bridges. We think, at least I think, there are 2 different stories called Bridges of Madison County. One is Clint Eastwood, Meryl Streep, and the screenwriter, and the other is Robert James Waller. And they're quite different. I'd say they're even radically different. So we're going to talk about the differences between the 2 versions.
Very good. Thank you. As Sherry mentioned, one of the interesting things that we've learned as we've gone through some of the research on the festival is the many intersections between the lives of our 5 featured authors, but as well as others within the community at that time. And Ruth was married to Ferner Nunn, who was also a Cedar Falls author and literary critic. His sister was Marjorie Nunn, who was a painter, painted and studied with Grant Wood at the Stone City Enclave. And she was a prolific artist, and her material was showed all around the country, and the Hearst Center has a large collection of her work, and that will be shown at the Hearst Center beginning on May 18th. So just another link to our artistic talents here in Cedar Falls. And we'll take a quick break there and be back with some more information.
We connect here.
We connect here.
We connect here.
Hello and welcome to Currents. I'm Mary Taylor and I'm a member of the steering committee for the first ever Cedar Falls Authors Festival. We have 3 guests today who are members of that steering committee as well. Rosemary Beach, Scott Coelty, and Sherry Dargan. Welcome and thank you for being here. I would like to refer everybody right away to cfauthorsfestival.org, which is a really useful website that is full of information about the 5 nationally recognized authors that we are celebrating from Cedar Falls: Robert Waller, James Hurst, Ruth Sukow, Nancy Price, and Bess Streeter Aldrich. And you can find out a lot of information about their writing, their biographies, their connections to each other in our community, other artwork that was inspired by their writing. So just take some time to check that out. Also, key to that website is our festival series of events, so be sure to check that out. We also have a fabulous poster that Gary Kelly has designed for us, which is for sale at the Cedar Falls Tourism and Visitors Bureau and the Hearst Center for the Arts. It's $25, and that is a signed poster, and that is helping support our festival activities. So we encourage you to purchase one of those to support the events. Scott, you know, we've been working on this project for about 6 months now, and I, for one, was not very well informed about a lot of these authors and have learned a lot. What do you think it is about Cedar Falls that kind of created a great place for them to do so much writing and work?
Well, if you look on the Gary Kelly poster, there's a hint. It's in the water. The figure is in front of the Cedar River. We used to joke about that. There seems to be so many writers in Cedar Falls working all the time, putting out all kinds of things. A number of names come to mind: Grant Tracy, Jeremy Schraffenberger, Vince Cotera, Jim O'Loughlin, David Grant, David Gibson, Len Freund, and so forth. The names just go on and on. There's something in the Cedar Falls air, maybe, and water that causes this ferment. And writers are talking and they're creating things. There's really a lot of creating going on. It just has to do with, I think, the nature of the writing community in this town.
Well, and I think our community is really supportive of the arts in general, and the writing just is a component of that. We have great visual artists, we have great dramatic artists here, just a really supportive artistic community in general.
I think that's true.
As you mentioned, we have a lot of other authors that are part of the festival. Rosemary, do you want to kind of leap forward a little bit and share some of the other events that aren't necessarily about our 5 featured authors, but are going to be interesting and exciting anyway?
Well, we have lots of good things coming up, and we're going to look forward to asking some of our historical writers, people who've written about the history of Cedar Falls. We have Ken Lifetalk, we have Jeff Copeland, we have Cindy Sweet. We have so many of those people who wrote about early Cedar Falls or the history of Cedar Falls. And so we're going to try and kind of put them in a little spot to share that kind of interest. We have the activity at University Book and Supply, where we are going to have an author's signing, and people can come and buy a book for Christmas. That would be our theory. And all of those kind of things. We're going to do the one thing that I think is really quite remarkable is the Herb Hake. And that's going to be at the UNI Museum and at their library. And they're going to do a retrospective of Herb Hake, who was with the university, many, many years. He was way ahead of his time, and I think we're really going to enjoy going back and getting into that history also. So those are just a few. There's lots and lots more.
I think Herb actually started what would be a very early version of Currents. He used to do a lot of public information television at UNI. So I think that will be fun to see what he's got, what they've got on his past there as well. So sort of accidentally, our events coalesced around various months, and June features Ruth Sukow, and she had quite a fan group following her, and they developed their own Ruth Sukow Memorial Association. So Sherry has been a member of that group for a long time and is really our Ruth Sukow expert. So Sherry, would you give us some background on Ruth, and then we'll talk about the events that are related to her work.
Sure. I could talk about her for a long time. I just wrote a chapter about her in a book that's going to be published in May about some of the forgotten Midwestern writers in the 1900s. She's described as a realistic and a regionalist. She kind of resisted that idea, but people who read her short stories, and she wrote over 50 and 9 books, say that they really capture what Iowa was like in those days. Now, I did not know anything about her. I was an English major. I think Barbara is also our Sukow expert as well. And she and I both agreed it was really strange that here we went through graduate school and never, living in Iowa, never heard of Ruth Sukow. So I sometimes would tell my students she's the most famous Iowa author you've never heard of. And she married a much younger man, Ferner. So after she died in 1960, he's the one who formed the Suco Association. And I got involved with that with my husband, and there's some kind of a pattern here. Mike decided at some point about 10 years ago that they needed a website. So he developed the first website, and then he turned it over to me. So I'm also the webmaster for the Suco organization, and that is www.ruthsuco.org, and you'll see links to that on the Cedar Falls website as well.
Very good.
One of the things I want to say real quickly is the 2 reasons I see the value of reading some of these writers. One, connecting to an earlier time in our history. The Iowa that your grandparents and great-grandparents knew. What's really ironic, though, is that I used a 1924 story with my community college students, and they got it. So good writing is good writing.
It's still relevant.
That's right.
Exactly. So the Ruth Suco Memorial Association is meeting on Saturday, June 10th at
That's
the Cedar
right.
Falls Public Library.
And oh my, have we got a day planned. I mean, a whole day. Well, the meeting in the morning is mostly for members, but we do have guests. And then at 1 o'clock, we're going to talk about one of her novellas, really, a part of the institution, which is based on Grinnell College during World War I. At 3 o'clock, we're going to have an unveiling of a new sculpture in the Hearst Sculpture Garden, and there'll be a plaque, and that's dedicated to Ruth and Ferner. And then at 7 o'clock, there's going to be a program by Rebecca Christian and Lenore Howard. Back in 1992, the 100-year anniversary of Suco's birth, we put this wonderful play on in, I think, 6 different cities around Iowa. And Rebecca is the person who wrote the play. Lenore is the one who performed it. Quick, cool story. Barbara and I found the play several years ago down in the special collections in Iowa City. It was stuck inside a gigantic folder. And when I unearthed it, I was so excited because I'd read about the play, but nobody knew where the play was. And the playwright no longer had a copy of her play.
Wow.
Because remember, we had these old hard diskettes, and
Right.
you know, where do you go to print off a new copy of the play?
Yeah.
So I was able to get it, scan it, and send it to Rebecca, and she was thrilled.
Great.
So I can't wait to meet her.
Great. And that play will actually be performed later in September with some of our fall events.
That's right.
So again, all of those Suco events on Saturday, June 10th are open to the public, and they're on our website if you're interested in those. And we'll take a quick break.
All right.
They're coming. Places, everybody.
Light check. 1, 2, 1, 2.
Everything looks good on our end.
And lights.
Come alive with the forest. Visit discovertheforest.org to find a forest near you.
Hi, welcome to Currents. I'm Mary Taylor. I'm a member of the steering committee that's organizing the first ever Cedar Falls Authors Festival. And we're celebrating our 5 nationally known best-selling authors, James Hurst, Ruth Suco, Nancy Price, Robert Waller, and best reader Aldrich. And I have 3 guests with me today, members of our steering committee, Rosemary Beach, Scott Coelty, and Sherry Dargan. And we are here to share some of the information about the authors we're celebrating, as well as some of the events that will be showcasing their works. July, we will be having several events related to Nancy Price and her works, most notably Sleeping with the Enemy. Scott, could you give us some background on Nancy Price?
Sure, you know, of the 5 writers, she's probably the most Cedar Falls. She still lives here, part of the year in Florida, but part of the year here, and she's still writing. and she will be available for signing. So she's the only living of the 5 authors. She's written 7 novels, the first one being A Natural Death in '73, and the most recent one is No One Knows. And she's still out there writing and actually illustrating her own works now, which is fairly unusual. So she's a polymath like Waller, like some of the others. She's an illustrator, a novelist, and also a wonderful poet. She has several great collections of poems out there. So she's really worth knowing, and we can actually get to know her in person at this festival.
Right. And she will be at the events, at least one of the events in July. You mentioned that she does illustrate her own books, and she's still doing that. The Hearst Center has a collection of her illustrations, and they will be on display at the Hearst Center beginning on July 7th and running through September 20th. So once you've had a chance to learn more about Nancy Price, you may become more interested in her illustrations and her other books as well. So take a chance to go to the Hearst and see that exhibit. We do have several events in July focusing on Nancy Price, and they're centered around the weekend of July 14th through the 16th. There are 3 events that weekend. On Friday, July 14th, there will be a showing of Sleeping with the Enemy in Searly Park, so an outdoor movie experience. I do want to specifically mention the movie is R-rated. It's not a kids movie, so be sure to remember that when you're making your plans for the park that evening. The Cultural Partnership and the Gallagher Blue Dorn are helping with that event. There will be music and a beer garden and just some nice summer fun in Searly Park that evening with the movie. On the 15th, on Saturday, there will be a special tour of the homes that are connected to Nancy Price's works. She also lived at the President's House on the UNI campus. Her father, Malcolm Price, was president of the university from 1940 to 1950. So the President's House will be open as part of that tour, as well as Nancy's home, where she lived around the park when she wrote the book, and 3 of the other homes that are featured and described in the book. And that event starts at 1 o'clock on Saturday the 15th. At Searly Park, you'll be given a map and information about how to do that self-guided walking tour, and the homes will be open to tour as well. And then on Sunday at 2 o'clock on July 16th, there will be a panel discussion, and that is the event where Nancy will be present. Barbara Lounsbury and Greg Holt and Grant Tracy will be there talking about Sleeping with the Enemy, and really what's interesting about it is the different endings in the book and the movie. So they'll be on hand to share information about that. And then we come to fall. We just want to give a highlight of some fall events. We will have a more in-depth program later to focus on those. But fall will bring us some specific programming on James Hearst and on Bess Streeter Aldrich. Scott, can you give us some background on Hearst and really his impact in the community?
Sure. Well, you know, the Hearst Center in the Cedar Falls, where we're doing a lot of these events, is actually their former home. And they willed it to the city of Cedar Falls, which then it got turned into the Merle Norton Hearst and James Hearst Center for the Arts, place where we all go all the time. Also, he wrote 600 poems, which are collected in the Complete Poetry of James Hearst in the University of Iowa Press in 2001. And he actually died in 1982 or 3, I think it was 1983, and ended up being the poet that everybody remembers from Cedar Falls. His poems still resonate. We still talk about them. Truth is a poem that, how the devil do I know if there are rocks in your field? These poems are around. And I was able to turn several of them into songs. I think they're wonderful to sing as well as read. So he has a great presence among the people that understand poetry in Cedar Falls.
Good. And really one of the exciting things that we've just learned about in the last month or so is Jim O'Laughlin, who's a professor at UNI, recently found 18 previously undiscovered Hearst poems. So he's working on getting those published, and he'll be doing a program on those this fall. So he has now 618 poems that will eventually be published in Cedar Falls. Right. And Rosemary, we also are going to be celebrating Bess Streeter Aldrich this fall, and it really was quite a happy coincidence that the Cedar Falls School District decided to name the new school after Bess, and just really kind of helped just solidify the idea that we were doing the right thing in celebrating our local authors.
Well, she is our local author, and she wrote the book Song of Years, which is about Cedar Falls. All the people in that book really existed. They just existed under another name. And so early number of years ago, we did a tour of the places that Bess Streeter Aldrich had, where it was attached to, the cemetery, her home, and what all else. We're going to try and revisit that, have a tour, so that people can go and enjoy those things too. So I think that's going to be a really fun day and a fun experience to go through.
And tell us a little bit about Miss Bishop as well.
Well, Miss Bishop, we think's written about our university, which was Iowa State Normal School. And Nebraska thinks it's theirs, but when you read the book, you will see our university as it first began. And it's about a single teacher, and it's occasionally you can still find it on late night TV, but we do have the rights to play it, and we'll be showing that movie. I wanted to mention one quick thing is the readathon, and that's happening shortly in that time space too.
Yes, there will be a readathon on Saturday, August 5th at the Cedar Falls Public Library. We'll have a full day of sharing these works out loud. And interestingly, 3 of our 5 authors had birthdays in August, so we thought this would be a fun way to celebrate their birthdays, and there'll be treats at the library and a chance to really learn more about all of these authors. I do want to mention the website one more time, cfauthorsfestival.org. That is where you can find anything and everything about all of our authors and links to lots more resources and information. And again, we thank you for taking part in our festival events, and we look forward to seeing you.